Would Ben Tennyson or Finn the Human make a better Green Lantern? And what about the orange rings? Is Mr. Krabs greedier than Scrooge McDuck? Yet again, I'll be explaining the powers and rules of every major Lantern Corps and picking 3 ideal candidates for each, all from the worlds of cartoons and Western animation. I'll cover the whole emotional spectrum, plus the white and black cores of life and death. Oh, and by the way, I may have fibbed just a little bit in that thumbnail, so I didn't spoil which characters get which rings. But that's enough intro. Right off the top of the emotional spectrum are the Red Lanterns of Rage. Harnessing the crimson light of anger, the Red Lanterns' rings operate on a blood pact with their wielders, transforming their blood into burning plasma that can be regurgitated and burned through the hard light constructs of other Lantern Corps. Red Lanterns are violent and ruthless, a bull in a china shop wherever they go, often at their own expense. The self-destructive red ring can't be removed without killing the user, and they're dedicating their lives to rage and hatred. But the healing hope of a blue ring can return their body to normal. Of course, there are dozens of characters who possess enough anger to use a red ring. Donald Duck, Yosemite Sam, Eric Cartman, even Buttercup of the Powerpuff Girls. But the 3 I picked to represent the Corps have all been angry enough that it was self-destructive and shattered their relationships as they receded into rage. First up is the Scourge of Cybertron, legendary leader of the Decepticons and bane of the universe, Megatron. Megatron has been depicted countless ways, but I'm specifically referring to the version from Transformers 1. Originally the well-meaning but hot-tempered D-16, he was bit by bit radicalized against the Primes after learning about the conspiracy that had been suppressing Cybertronian society. The more he learned, the angrier he became, until he was so enraged that he was willing to let his best friend, Orion Pax, die so that he could tear apart his oppressors with his own hands. Megatron rules the Decepticons with an iron fist, no pun intended, and wages war for millions of years, all because of his endless grudge against Optimus and the Primes. His petty rage would make the red ring burn bright. Next up is the hot-headed reptile and perpetual loner, Raphael of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. No matter the continuity, Raph always struggles with anger issues. Relishing in battle more than his brothers, he is the quickest to seek revenge and frequently clashes with Leonardo about it. Master Splinter even gave him the deadliest weapons of the 4, sais, so that he could practice restraint. At times, Raph cannot sanction the wisdom or temperance of Splinter and leaves the group to perform brutal vigilante justice on his own. Whether he's taking out his anger on enemies, chasing after revenge, or refusing to follow the direction of cooler heads, even at the detriment of his team, Raphael almost always chooses rage above his other emotions. He would embrace a red ring. And my last choice is another villain obsessed with an ancient grudge, but on a much, much smaller scale. Plankton from SpongeBob SquarePants. One of the best friends of Eugene Krabs, the two split after a failed business venture, and ever since, Plankton has been chasing the success of the Krusty Krab. His entire life revolves around stealing the secret formula from Mr. Krabs and crushing him so that he can elevate the Chum Bucket above his lifelong rival. Plankton is a super genius inventor, constantly creating new machines and schemes to steal the formula. He's so blinded by his hatred that he never even considers leaving the restaurant business and starting a tech company or something. But that's what anger does, it blinds us. But a red ring won't alter the mind of a user anywhere near as much as the next color. The orange lantern ring is powered by greed. The orange light of avarice is a corruptive power. It bleeds into the mind of someone who's naturally greedy and makes them obsess over owning everything. They're also a single user instead of an entire core. One person keeps all of the rings and the power battery to himself, and can use the light to create constructs of living beings to fight for him as a one-man army. The orange light is very manipulative, making the wielder paranoid that everyone is out to steal the ring and everything else they own. I did end up picking 3 characters, but know that usually only one person would use an orange ring at a time. When considering cartoon characters for this role, I initially thought of Mickey Mouse, but that's not really fair. It's the Disney company that's a gigantic black hole of greed, not their mouse mascot. Mr. Krabs would be a good fit. He's literally always obsessed with money, but I actually have a different crab in mind. First up is the giant coconut crab and owner of Shifrilus Productions, Tamatoa from Moana. The giant sea creature basically only exists for one purpose: hoard treasure inside his underwater cave, sealed away from the prying eyes and grasping fingers of the outside world. He has an enormous mountain of shiny gold, it's always fixated on collecting new treasures, and he even stole the glowing heart of Tefiti, a supremely powerful artifact, just because he liked how it looked. My next pick is a little more tragic though, Scrooge McDuck from DuckTales. Scrooge is so obsessed with wealth that most people only think of him in one way, swimming in his gigantic pile of gold coins. He loves money for money's sake. Instead of ever spending it, he just wants to hoard it. He's refused to give away even a single dime to charity, and the entire conceit of DuckTales is that he wants to travel the world and discover more treasure that he can own. The reason Scrooge is a tragic choice is that he's not perfectly selfish. He does care for his family and is occasionally generous to other people. The orange light would corrupt him, burning away that little bit of humanity and replacing it with an unmatched desire for more money. Finally, the best choice for this ring is the owner of the Springfield nuclear power plant, Charles Montgomery Burns of The Simpsons. Mr. Burns is an old, decrepit billionaire permanently obsessed with his own selfishness. His catchphrase, "excellent," always follows one of his evil schemes to make more money. He's so greedy that he even stole the $1 trillion bill meant to aid post-war Europe. He sold off his employees' entire retirement fund so he could buy an art collection, and even blotted out the frickin' sun so that he could force Springfield to rely on his power plant. Mr. Burns' greed knows no bounds. He's an obvious choice for our final Orange Lantern, a true villain. And that's just in time for the most villainous of all the corps. The Yellow Lanterns of the Sinestro Corps hold the power of fear in their rings. A yellow ring is charged by your ability to scare others into subjugation, create order through fear. Yellow Lanterns can implicitly read your mind and make constructs of your greatest fears. If they use the ring on, say, Scooby-Doo, it would generate constructs of ghosts and monsters, exactly what Scooby is most afraid of. And if they used the yellow ring on me, it would generate a construct of a woman who wants more emotional vulnerability in our relationship. Terrifying. So, to be a great Yellow Lantern, you have to be scary and be good at using that fear to control others. At first, my mind immediately jumped to Scully and the other employees of Monsters, Inc., whose entire lives revolve around causing fear. But they just terrify children and then leave. Scully never creates order through fear. And my runner-up for this corps was Azula of Avatar: The Last Airbender. She could definitely use a yellow ring, and well, but there are better choices out there. The first of which is an unspeakable evil, the shape-shifting master of darkness, Aku of Samurai Jack. Aku literally subjugated the entire world through fear for hundreds of years. He can use his shape-shifting to take any form, anything that could scare you. He could be watching you at any time without your knowledge, and because he's immortal, your best friend of 20 years could have been Aku in disguise the entire time. Powerful warriors like the Scotsman are terrified of him, and he's even convinced Jack at points that resistance was completely futile. Aku is the exact same type of tyrannical evil built on fear as our next pick, Father from Codename Kids Next Door. The raging despot, cloaked in black and surrounded by flames, Father is the parent of the delightful children from down the lane, and uses them as his soldiers to terrorize the other children of the world. Every member of the KND dreads having to deal with Father. He's their most powerful villain by far. He easily steamrolls anyone he comes across, including other adults like Nightbrace or even Grandfather. He controls the entire world through fear. Even his own kids are only loyal because of how much they fear him. And finally, our last Yellow Lantern is a literal embodiment of fear that silently rules over the great unknown, the Beast of Over the Garden Wall. We know very little about this creature, only that it vaguely resembles a Wendigo. Usually cloaked in shadows, we only ever see his face for a split second. The Beast feeds on fear and despair, luring lost souls into the woods and transforming them into Edelwood trees. He psychologically torments his victims, including Wirt, playing mind games, singing eerie songs, and convincing them to fall into hopelessness so that he can feed on their fear. With a yellow ring, the beast would likely have no need to keep his lantern lit and could expand the Edelwood forest all throughout the unknown. But despite the beast's overwhelming presence, Wirt defeated him through willpower and ingenuity, exactly like a Green Lantern. The Green Lantern Corps of Oa are heroic defenders of the universe, using their rings to generate constructs of anything they can imagine, battle the forces of evil, and conquering fear wherever they tread. Green Lanterns are prototypical heroes, so most protagonists who are able to wield a Green Lantern ring would have some efficiency with it. As a few honorable mentions, Popeye, Samurai Jack, Hiccup from How to Train Your Dragon, and Buzz Lightyear. These are all characters that I did consider, but my top 3 specifically overcome great fear, time and time again. Finn the Human of Adventure Time is probably one of the safest picks for a GL in all of cartoons. He's fairly dumb, but endlessly heroic, dedicating his entire life to adventuring and defending the land of Oo from the forces of evil. He never wavers in his loyalty to Princess Bubblegum, even when his teenage emotions got him all up in a crazy funk, and he attacks every single problem head-on, regardless of how it may painfully maim him, which happens a lot. He even overcame his phobia of the ocean, a deeply rooted fear, and was able to travel to the remote islands where the history of humanity lay buried. My next pick may surprise some of you, but makes perfect sense if you know how the Green Ring works. Courage the Cowardly Dog. Yes, he is described as cowardly in the title of the show, but that's actually a misnomer. Courage may be extremely scared, but he faces his fears every single time in order to save Eustace and Muriel. He's a lot like Jessica Cruz, the Green Lantern who experiences great fear due to her PTSD, but overcomes it with even greater willpower. Courage always stands up to horrifying monsters and ghosts, always finding a way to overcome them through clever strategy. He would wield the versatile Green Lantern ring incredibly well. And for my last pick, I chose someone both headstrong and brave like Finn, and who conquered immense fear like Courage. Avatar Korra. Korra is, in many ways, an inversion of Aang. She's extremely brash, confident in her decisions, and always leaping headfirst into danger without thinking. She's got the perfect mentality of a star Green Lantern. But after she was nearly killed by the metal poison of the Red Lotus, she suffered from debilitating terrors and hallucinations, all linked to her fear. But Korra was able to, through the help of Toph, finally face and overcome her fear of losing her strength and identity, removing the final bit of poison from her system and taking her place as Avatar once again. Green Lanterns are powerful heroes, and they're only strengthened by the blue light of hope, the emotion used by the Blue Lanterns. Blue rings are special. They have the ability to neutralize red rings and supercharge green rings, as well as offer a healing effect, because hope can sate rage and strengthen willpower. But as a trade-off, blue rings are inert in combat without a green ring present. Hope needs will to act on it. When I chose these Blue Lanterns, I wanted to find characters that were either extremely optimistic or always inspiring that optimism in others. And this is where my thumbnail told a little bit of a fib. I didn't actually pick Aang. While he could be a Blue Lantern, he is not my top choice. The first spot goes to Steven Universe, a symbol of hope, healing, and an unwavering belief in a better future. A Steven Universe future. Okay, alright, sorry. Steven always fights with compassion over aggression, and believes peace can be achieved in even the most turbulent situations. Steven even has some healing abilities of his own, like a blue ring, and I mean, come on, we all know how things ended with the homeworld, his unwavering belief that the diamonds could be redeemed. We all saw the comic with German Mustache Man. Steven is the ever-optimist, perfect for a blue ring. My next pick is so endlessly optimistic that it almost drove his coworker insane. That's right, everyone's favorite cleaning utensil, Square Bob Sponge Pants. SpongeBob holds a boundless hopefulness and joy that defies all reason. He's failed his driving test at least 1,000 times and expects to pass at every new opportunity. He always looks on the bright side of situations, assuming the best of unkind people like Squidward or Plankton. His attitude can lift the spirits of everyone around him. When stranded in the wilderness, he had blind faith that his magic conch would get him home. SpongeBob's hope would become an incredible cosmic force with a blue ring. And finally, a more serious pick for the last of the Blue Lanterns, Optimus Prime, leader of the Autobots. Originally the powerless Orion Pax, Optimus always envisioned a better future for Cybertron, and fought both tooth and nail to achieve that future even amidst the overwhelming oppression of the ruling classes. He inspires his fellow miners and Autobots with rousing speeches of unity, loyalty, and optimism. It's even in his frickin' name, dude, Optimus. Just Megatron's rage fuels him to fight a war for millions of years. Optimus's hope always rises to meet it. He never wavers in his belief that he can establish peace and freedom for sentient beings all across the universe. Optimus Prime is filled with never-ending hope and compassion. And compassion is the color of our next core, the Indigo tribe. Indigo Lanterns have the ability to teleport throughout the universe and can copy the unique powers of any other color ring in close proximity, although they don't function like the other cores. Instead of seeking out members with a lot of compassion, they actually look for the opposite: ruthless psychopaths and heartless killers, overwhelming their minds and infecting them with the indigo light of compassion, turning them into peaceful slaves for the tribe. So I looked for villainous characters who were completely selfish. My first thought and honorable mention was Rick Sanchez of Rick and Morty. Obviously extremely emotionally broken and detached from his feelings whenever possible, Rick is willing to doom entire universes of living beings on a whim. Unthinkably selfish behavior, but he does feel compassion for his family, which is enough for me to disclude him from the top 3 spots. Instead, I'm starting with the Cthulhu-faced alien conqueror Vilgax of Ben 10. Vilgax is a textbook psychopath. He's completely ruthless, without empathy. He views all living creatures as tools in his conquest for power. He's not above enslaving entire species and conquering countless worlds. All of his subordinates live in constant fear of him, and it's not unusual for him to backstab his allies as soon as it becomes convenient. While Vilgax has spent years searching for the Omnitrix, an Indigo ring would find him instead, forcefully rehabilitating him into a kind and caring ruler that serves the universe instead of subjugating it. Next is the interdimensional demonic entity with a soulless eye and a cute little top hat, Bill Cipher of Gravity Falls. Bill is a terrifying, otherworldly being who finds joy in causing others misery. He possessed Dipper and loved giving his body physical and emotional pain, erased the Time Baby from existence without a second thought, tormented the entire town during Weirdmageddon, and planned to destroy all of existence itself, literally wiping out reality, all because it amused him. He'll shuffle all the holes on your face for a laugh. He doesn't give a shit. Bill is heartless and a perfect Indigo candidate. Finally, my favorite pick for the Indigo tribe, former TV celebrity and current sitting president of the United States of America, Mr. Frog from Smiling Friends. Possibly Pim and Charlie's most difficult client, Mr. Frog is an emotionless monster. He rose to fame doing the Mr. Frog Show, but coldly states that he does not care about his fans in the slightest. He went on a racist tirade during his interview with Jimmy Fallon and has been seen violently murdering anyone who even slightly annoys him. He acts entirely on impulse, dumping toxic waste into wildlife reserves, eating babies, blowing up innocent people with the Green Goblin pumpkin bomb, and that's all while he was being filmed for a presidential TV ad spot. What was he doing when he's not on camera? The Indigo Ring would definitely seek out Mr. Frog for rehabilitation, although I'm not even sure it's strong enough to actually fix him. And the final color of the emotional spectrum, at least the primary one, is the violet light of love wielded by these star sapphires. The sapphire core channels love to create crystal constructs that trap or protect their beloveds, and they grow stronger the more violet rings are close by, as love is strongest when you share it. The love of a sapphire can be any kind. Their rings are charged with romantic, platonic, familial love, healthy, obsessive, controlling, doesn't matter. All that matters is that you have a lot of it. First, as a few honorable mentions, most classic love interest characters would make great Violet Lanterns. Minnie Mouse, Betty Boop, Isabella, Phineas and Ferb. But the same goes for the loverboy simp types, Johnny Bravo, Ice King, Wally. For my top 3, I had to go with characters that show just a little more depth than that. My first choice is the Snow Queen of Arendelle, Elsa of Frozen. Elsa's powers are directly tied to the love that she feels, and her arc is all about learning to embrace that love for her sister and for herself before she gets lost in isolation. Her magic initially spirals out of control because of her repressed emotions, but love was able to break through her emotional barriers and even save Anna from the curse of cold that nearly killed her. Truly in touch with her emotions, a star sapphire ring would blaze bright on her finger. My next pick is definitely an example of unhealthy, obsessive, destructive love. The ultimate simp, Mordecai from Regular Show. Mordecai pined after Margaret for years, fumbling her over and over again, constantly wrecking his relationships with his friends at the slightest opportunity of winning her favor. He was so obsessed, he even murdered Rigby for asking out Margaret before him. And let's not forget, after he dated Margaret and the two of them broke up, he then started dating CJ, and then somehow managed to still completely crash out as soon as Margaret appeared in his life again, even ruining Muscle Man's wedding and making it all about himself in an awful, incredibly hard to watch speech. Mordecai's status as Simp Supreme would make him an impossibly strong Star Sapphire. And finally, possibly the most bafflingly loyal wife in all of fiction, Marge Simpson. Everything Marge does is for her family. She's always sacrificing for her children. She gave up on her dreams, took on multiple jobs, and even put their needs first when it was most difficult. For some reason, she always forgives and stands by Homer, despite the absolutely insane shenanigans that he gets up to, the bounds of his stupidity often crippling their economic and social lives. Even when Homer's stupidity goes too far, and Marge really contemplates leaving him this time for realsies, she always comes back to him, because she just loves him that much. In fact, I bet she'll keep coming back to him for another 20 seasons at least, because God has cursed this show, never allowing it to die. And now that we're talking about death, the Black Lantern Corps is powered by darkness, the absence of all light, life, and emotion. Black rings are a zombie virus, overtaking those who are dead or have died before. Black rings can summon a twisted copy of every other ring power, as well as cast a shadow that shuts off the other rings in proximity, sapping them of their power. Black Lanterns are reapers, soldiers of death. They relish in the destruction of life. Of course, my first thought was a literal reaper, Grimm from the Adventures of Billy and Mandy. While yes, Grimm is the embodiment of death, he's not particularly interested in returning to his duties as a reaper. He's really nonchalant, kind of goofy. He does feel a connection to the two kids he's forced to serve. I don't know. Instead, I went with true villains to build out this core. Starting off is the king of the Ghost Zone and ruler of all undead, Pariah Dark from Danny Phantom. The primordial force of evil and original being of the Ghost Zone, Pariah was sealed away due to his immense power and unstoppable desire to conquer the world of the living. He's a being of pure death and destruction, devoid of empathy and remorse. He could only be stopped through the combined forces of Danny and some of his strongest enemies. As a Black Lantern, he would spread death beyond the Ghost Zone and into the furthest reaches of reality. My next choice is similar, a legendary force of pure malice sealed away for centuries that threatens every universe with the stench of death, the Lich from Adventure Time. Born from the atomic bombs that destroyed Earth and created the land of Oo, the Lich is an undead skeletal entity with no personal motives or desires. He seeks only to end all life, not just in the world, but in every world, nearly obliterating the multiverse after entering Prismo's domain. The Lich feeds on suffering and the despair of impending doom, spreading death by manipulating his victims, and even though he is defeated multiple times, he always comes back, an eternal cosmic force of anti-life. And lastly, who could be better to serve as a Black Lantern of Death than Death himself? Of course, I'm talking about the Wolf from Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. This character is Death incarnate. Not metaphorically, or rhetorically, or poetically, or theoretically. He is death. Straight up. He's a force of nature, omnipresent. He hunts down those who try and cheat death or take their lives for granted, proving to them the overwhelming and inescapable nature of death. The wolf is so powerful, no one ever actually defeats him in the movie. He only relents once Puss finally learns his lesson and chooses to value his life. But even this is with the promise that, yeah, one day he will return. With a black ring, Death could greatly expand his scope, using an army of the undead to terrorize those who are foolish enough to try and cheat him. Because you really can't cheat Death, so don't even try. Instead, do yourself a favor and choose life. The White Lantern Corps uses the white light of life, the combination of every color of the emotional spectrum: rage, avarice, fear, will, hope, compassion, and love. Representing freedom, creativity, and a mastery of emotions, white rings can completely obliterate black rings and their influence, healing the zombies from their power of death and perfectly recreating every power of the other colored rings. The white light also holds the life equation, the ultimate creative power of the universe, which can reshape reality and write new life into existence. To use a white ring, you either need to have a complete mastery of all 7 emotions of the spectrum, or be such a great champion of life and freedom that the ring is gifted to you by a current White Lantern. My first choice is the Dragon Warrior himself, Po the Kung Fu Panda. Po's journey across each of his films is all about self-discovery and spiritual enlightenment. His zeal for Kung Fu and life in general is exactly the sort of energy a White Lantern needs. He restores balance to the world, protecting the valley from those who would threaten the harmony. He's achieved inner peace, something that can only be done through a mastery of emotions, and in Kung Fu Panda 3, he learns to harness the life energy of Chi, even overcoming death itself as he ascends to the spirit realm, transcending mortality. Po would use a white ring to maintain peace and harmony, exactly what they exist for. My next pick may come as a shock, as green is the obvious choice, but I believe Ben Tennyson of Ben 10 would make an excellent White Lantern. Yes, he starts out as a little brat. He's hot-headed, greedy, arrogant, but by the time of Alien Force, Ben has grown into a hero worthy of protecting the entire universe. He wields the Omnitrix, literally an emissary of every life form across the galaxy. His very existence is an argument for freedom and equality. Ben is familiar with rebirth and the limitless power of creation. He recreated the universe himself as Alien X after it was wiped away. And when Vilgax absorbed the power of Dagon, Ben was worthy to fight with the Ascalon Blade, saving the universe from evil, a hero of life. And finally, some of you may have guessed, this is the real reason I didn't give him a blue ring. Avatar Aang is my favorite pick for the White Lantern Corps. The last of his people, a victim of the imperialist sins of the Fire Nation, Aang never lost his sense of hope and joy, delighting in the wonders of the world. He's a champion of freedom, a hero who accepted the responsibility of saving the entire planet at only 12 years old. Aang has run the gambit of emotion, the full journey necessary to master the entire spectrum. He's studied every ancient bending art under wise masters all across the globe. He's loved and lost and learned and grown, and he's done the work to open all of his chakras, mastering himself, his emotions, his spirituality, and the Avatar state. As the reincarnated Avatar, he is a walking embodiment of life after death, carrying the memories of every previous Avatar within his spirit. And when he was faced with killing the Fire Lord, Aang found a way to win and still choose life. Aang is a light on the world and an excellent White Lantern. He slots in perfectly with my other 2 favorites that I chose in these videos here, the anime and video game Lantern Corps. Stay frosty.